practical experience is on the side of those who believe the variety is real. 100% of practical experience, if you assume the variety is really there, life always works out better. In fact, it would be totally dysfunctional unless, and even the impersonalists knew this. So therefore, even if they want to hold some bizarre, totally undemonstrable theory that ultimately it's all illusion, they themselves accept that in order to function in the world, you have to accept it as real. And therefore, it turns out, in order to be functional in this world, you have to accept the oneness and difference. And it seems to me the burden is on them. If all practical activity, all practical perception, everything about the real practical world shows variety. If someone wants to deny what everyone can see is really there, if someone wants to deny which every functional person in the world accepts as true, they take the burden on themselves. So, you see what I mean? It's not like, and ultimately, it's really, these kinds of theories really came from monasteries where you had celibate monks with too much time in their hands. And they just got into these very sort of technical, very extremely mental ideas, which have nothing to do with the real world. It's really just, it really is a bunch of monks with too much time on their hands, coming up with just very mental, very impractical ideas that they themselves did not follow in their real lives. Yes, back there?
Thank you for this very enlightening discussion of the philosophical debate between the different types of Vedantas historically in India. It seems though that in our modern preaching that the debate is more often amongst people, materialists versus religionists generally, or between or among various religions, of Islamic people and the Christians, and then we're seeing the Indian-based religious type. How does this analysis apply, or is there any way that this analysis, philosophical analysis, help us to understand our position in the modern debate?
Well, I think that it is relevant in this sense. If you look at the New Age movement, if we're allowed to use that term, just as I think it was the first Newtonian principle, every action causes an equal and opposite reaction.
I think it's third law.
Third?
Third law of Newton?
Third law of Newton.
I think so.
Anyway, one of the first few laws of Newton was that. So I want to talk about that. So just hold that in your mind, that principle. And there's a type of Newtonian cultural physics. And then consider the psychological tendency of what's called post-traumatic stress disorder, which I'm sure you've dealt with in your professional career. Post-traumatic means that after a traumatic event, which can be, a terrible accident, witnessing a terrible crime, combat, just all kinds of, things that just shock the human mind. And then post-traumatic, after that, there's a stress disorder. There's a continuing anxiety. And interestingly, two of the main symptoms of this PTSD are hypervigilance and withdrawal. Because someone who's been shocked like that, they become hypervigilant. They're really on guard because they're afraid they're going to become traumatized again. And because of that fear, they also withdraw from things. And so you can see that in relationships. People who have had very bad and traumatic experiences in relationships become hypervigilant and they tend to back away from relationships. And so the point I want to make here is that if you study the history of Western civilization, because that's where we are right now, I think it's absolutely obvious It's absolutely irrefutable that the religious history of Western civilization has been deeply, profoundly traumatic. I mean, the experience of walking out the door of your house and seeing one of your neighbors being burned alive because of sort of relatively subtle theological mistakes. I mean, the sheer quantity of violence, the amount of persecution. Decades after Newton, there were scholars in the best universities in Europe writing learned articles on how to recognize the true witch so you don't burn the wrong woman. I mean, the Inquisitions, where you had many of the most clever minds in Europe, if not the wisest, employed full-time thinking up the absolutely most excruciating, horrific ways to kill someone so they don't die too soon. But they suffer the maximum amount of pain in the most horrible ways. And so, I mean, you can go on and on and on. So the religious history, we go on all day about the history. The history of Western religion is severely traumatic. And so my take is, and this sort of will get back, coming around the bend to your question, that Western civilization, at least educated Western civilization, not the born-again medieval types among us, but educated and in the old-fashioned sense of the word, if we can still use it, liberal, in the old-fashioned, the educated liberal tradition of Erasmus, not of So, you can see that there is actually this post-traumatic stress disorder at a societal level. And so in Western civilization, because even apart from the past, the experience of just meeting people every day who are the most really stupid, vulgar, nasty people in the world, in the name of God, who tell other people that that all of your sacred beliefs are not only wrong, they're evil, and that anyone that shares your sacred beliefs God will torture them forever because everything you hold sacred is evil. I mean, this itself is evil. The idea that God is such an evil, psychotic fiend, that God will torture His own children forever for mental crimes, subtle theological mistakes, is itself evil. In other words, this fanatical teaching is not only wrong, it is itself evil because it portrays God as evil. Because any father or mother that would torture their own children simply for some philosophical disagreement, that parent would be evil, would be an evil fiend. And so to depict God as evil is itself evil. And so because we have this evil, false teaching going on, and when they could do it, when they could get away with it, they murdered people over it. They just can't get away with it anymore. I think much to their disappointment. So, therefore, there's been a response. There has been a response where people have gone to the other extreme. It's like the Newtonian principle. And because let's say, fanatical Christian teaching, and there are many good Christians. In fact, most Christians in America don't believe that people of other religions go to hell now. But at least those who still hold these evil views, and they are evil, because they are over-specific. Their definition of who receives the grace of God is over-specific. Like you have to belong to a particular denomination or a particular religion, and therefore the reaction has been over-general. To passionately oppose any specification. That anything anybody wants to worship is fine. And that as soon as you try to in any way specify, as soon as you try to in any way compromise the sort of meaningless generality of God, then you threaten society. And so, or you threaten real spirituality. And so this is hypervigilance. This is one of the, so in other words, so-called liberal, educated people